The egg story was one of the most unique storylines that the Dream SMP has ever had, and ever since the Red Banquet, there hasn't been much news about the egg. So, what actually happened to it, and will it ever hatch? Let's talk about that. But first, thanks to Opera GX for sponsoring this video. Currently, your browser looks like this. It's plain, it's boring, and it lacks a bunch of useful features. But imagine if your browser could look like this. A very nice Minecraft world. Well, imagine no more. Just like your Minecraft worlds, you can fully customize the Opera GX browser and make it exactly how you want it. You can even get custom animated wallpapers like the one I've got here, and it's pretty cool. There's so many different wallpapers that you'll definitely find one you'll love. Opera GX has a feature in which you can limit the amount of RAM and CPU usage the browser uses, allowing me to have more power dedicated to editing and playing games, and will allow you to increase your FPS and just make your PC run better whilst watching videos on the side. But that's not it, oh no. Obviously everybody loves to listen to music, especially when playing Minecraft and mining for hours, so imagine your browser had things like Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube Music built directly into it. Yeah, absolute game changer. I've even heard that Opera GX is planning to create a Minecraft server which will have a ton of your favorite games like Bed Wars, Murder Mystery, Sky Wars, all of that in one server. And currently it's in beta testing, so you'll be able to try it out in March, so head over to their Discord server in the description and check it out. Massive thank you to Opera GX for sponsoring the video, so go check out the link in the description and download it. Now, to understand everything, we need to go back to the beginning. The egg was first seen on the SMP in a mansion owned by a rich guy named Sir Billiam. This was many years ago, and all the characters that you currently know of on the Dream SMP hadn't even been born yet. Carl travelled back in time and arrived at this mansion during one of the Tales from the SMP episodes, and during his visit, the electricity to the house would cut out and guests around the house would be murdered. This happened until the only guest alive would be Carl, in which he hides behind a fake painting, leading him to enter a hidden room containing the egg. At this point, Sir Billiam confesses to being the guardian of the egg and says that the egg is hungry and needs to be fed. And just as Sir Billiam was about to attack Carl, he gets teleported back to the present day. And with that, we go forward in time to the more current and recent events of the SMP, to the day that Bad Boy Halo discovered the egg in his statue room that he was constructing. In December of 2020, Bad Boy Halo showed a few members of the SMP a red egg in the corner of his statue room. At this point, he was slowly growing an attachment to the egg, even though this thing looked like it could be super dangerous. The egg ended up growing and expanding, covering parts of the SMP with clumps of vines and slowly overtaking people's builds. And at this point, Dream and Sam were trying to destroy these vines. But eventually, Bad Boy Halo would find out about this and try to step in and stop them from taking any more down, mentioning that he thought the vines were nice looking and needed to be around. These vines would begin to rapidly grow, covering tons of important buildings and infecting the SMP. The majority of the server disliked these vines and would try to go around and get rid of them, but an exception was made for Captain Puffy, Ponk, and Antfrost. These members for some reason understood why Bad Boy Halo liked the vines, even to a point that Antfrost would be able to hear the egg speak just like Bad Boy Halo. During this, Bad and Antfrost became disciples for the egg, planting vines in people's bases and trying to spread the egg as much as possible, and even taking orders from the egg itself. And around a similar time, Ponk was being infected by the egg too, finding a version of the egg inside of his newly built casino and slowly being corrupted. Ponk protected this in a glass box and went on to call it Little Red, and as time went on, this part of the egg would grow and Ponk's love for the egg would grow too, leading him to become a disciple for the egg as well. Whilst the egg was growing massively, Bad Boy Halo took Sam down to inspect the egg and see how it was doing, and at this point it had grown vines all around the room and doubled in size. Sam didn't like this and decided that he needed to place TNT to destroy it, and as it exploded, it caused the egg to crack, creating magma blocks all around the place. Bad Boy Halo said that this made the egg incredibly angry, and that it would need flesh to heal itself, and said that Sam would have to sacrifice himself. Obviously, Sam ran away to Church Prime to cleanse themselves in the water, whilst Bad Boy Halo and Puffy covered the egg in obsidian so that no one else could hurt the egg again. But some of the obsidian didn't last too long, as Skeppy got curious to what the egg looked like and ended up destroying a few blocks. Bad, Puffy and Ant realized this and went on to protect the egg, but Skeppy told them that he needed some time alone with the egg, leading to Skeppy covering the egg with obsidian again, but this time trapping himself inside with it. During his time inside with the egg, Skeppy had changed color to red and was fully infected by the egg, becoming a disciple of the egg as well. Over time, the egg became even more powerful, eating through a layer of the obsidian that was placed around it, and was now covered in nether bricks and darker red blocks. All the water that was placed near it had changed into lava, and overall, this thing was getting super dangerous. At this time, Punz, Bad Boy Halo, and Ant decided to make a decontamination entrance to the statue room, allowing people to enter and quickly cleanse themselves when leaving. And over the next few weeks, the egg would continue to grow its vines until the whole room was full up, and around this time, Bad, Punz, Ant, and Puffy met up to talk about the egg and what they should do about it, thus creating the Eggpire. They all agreed to destroy the decontamination area around it and just let the egg be free, and in doing so, Punz became more infected and started to fully love the egg, whereas Puffy had continued to be a bit iffy about the situation, leading to her writing in a book to not trust the egg. On January 25th of 2021, the Eggpire gathered for another meeting, this time without Punz but with Sam. They talk about getting rid of Tommy as he was getting in the way with their plans, and it was realized that he was the only person on the server that was fully immune to the egg. But Sam heavily disagreed with this plan and tried to stop Bad and Ant from going after him, this leading to Sam being dropped through a trapdoor and left in an obsidian cage above the egg until he would be infected. The next day, Puffy and Tommy went to where Sam was trapped and broke him out, but at this point he was super worn out and tired, and there was notable changes on his skin to signify that the egg may have infected him slightly. After a while though, Sam would slowly get better and back to normal, and with this become heavily against the egg. A few days later, Bad Boy Halo would go and talk to Technoblade and trying to convince him to join the Eggpire. He would take Techno on a tour around the vines and eventually to the egg. Whilst this was happening though, Rambo was sneakily following them to see what they were doing. Whilst the tour was going on, Puffy had heard about Bad's plan to recruit Technoblade and rushed over to the egg to stop Bad, and in doing so, Rambo was caught by Bad and pushed into the same hole that Sam was trapped into. Luckily though, Technoblade dropped him a trident so he could quickly get out, because if he didn't get out, then Rambo would have been infected as well and another person would have joined the Eggpire. Later down the line, Ant told Bad that Tommy had been killed in the prison and he was trapped inside the main cell with Dream. This was big news for the Eggpire, after Tommy's ability to be immune to the egg was really dangerous for them. They chose to hold a party in celebration and headed to Tommy's house to dance and eat cake. But during this celebration, Puffy had heard about why they were celebrating and got really angry with Bad, this causing the Eggpire to move to another one of Tommy's buildings, the Big Init Hotel, and rent out a room to finish the party off. But then, Hannah's house was covered in blood vines from the egg, and this was causing her to be ill and get an allergic reaction. Some visited her at her house and told Hannah about the egg and that they need to clear up these vines as soon as possible before she gets infected like the others. And as they do clear them up, Bad and Ant arrived at the house asking why they were destroying these vines. Sam told Bad about her allergic reaction to them, but the Eggpire didn't care and took her to visit the egg. When they arrived at the egg spoke to Bad and told him that it didn't want Hannah to be killed. Instead, the Eggpire decided to trap Hannah in the obsidian cage above the egg, just like they did to Sam and Rambo. Over time, the colour from her skin would start to drain, causing her to be fully grey and get really ill. After Sam had cleared up a few of the vines at Hannah's house, he ran over to the egg to see Hannah trapped inside the cage, and proceeded to break her out before she died from the reaction. He carried her home, but while this was all happening, the egg kept on speaking to Hannah, convincing her to listen to the egg and potentially help it. Due to the negative image of the Eggpire decided it was time to throw a banquet with many of the members of the SMP, and try to get them all to like the egg. Bad and Ant began to remove some of the vines across the SMP and redesign the statue room in order to make the egg more welcoming and prepare for the party. They handed out invites to many of the members and were preparing for a chance at peace with them. And this is where Quackity's plan came into play. Quackity had heard about the egg and what it was doing and felt like it was time to destroy it. He created many underground tunnels to and from the statue room and then plastered the area with TNT to destroy this egg once and for all. But as he was about to light it, Bad and Punz had spotted him and attempted to stop him. After a back and forth argument between the group, Quackity had no other choice than to light the TNT and blow up everything. But with with doing so, it seemed like not too much damage was caused to the egg, as it was found out that any TNT explosion would make the egg change to obsidian and then back again as a defense mechanism. After this, Bad Boy Halo was still preparing for the banquet. He'd been spending the next few weeks decorating the statue room up more and added a massive table and dance floor for the party. He noticed that Skeppy was standing on top of the egg and talking to it, so he went over to try and get him down to talk, but Skeppy refused and told Bad to leave him alone. So Bad keeps on trying to get him down from the egg, but Skeppy doesn't budge. Bad proceeds to mention how if Skeppy wasn't there the other day, then the egg would have been hurt by Quackity's explosion, and also tells Skeppy to stay away from the egg for now. But Skeppy doesn't like this and starts to shout at Bad, causing an argument between the two. After a back and forth, Bad punches Skeppy into a pool of lava, which eventually killed him. Bad was in shock and obviously didn't mean for this to happen, causing him to black out. About a week later, it is time to host the Red Banquet. Bad Boy Halo, Punk and Antfrost welcome all the guests down into the statue room and give them food and drinks. They all proceed to party for a bit until it was time for the main event. They headed over to the main table and Bad started to say a speech, but as he did though, lava rained down from the ceiling, trapping all the guests towards the egg. Bad proceeds with his speech, ending it with telling the guests that they should all prepare to die. A fight breaks out with the egg pie's main goal in mind to kill as many guests as possible, so that the egg could use their energy and hatch. Puffy went to grab armor and weapons from a secret chest she had prepared beforehand, but the chest was emptied. And it is now in which Hannah tells Puffy that she was on the egg pie's side and that she gave the armor away. Sam had prepared a TNT trap above the egg, but it all failed as the egg could now change itself into obsidian when taking explosive damage. The guests were all helpless and the egg pie was fully in control. Bad and Ant started off with executing Foolish and giving his energy to the egg. They made him stand in front of the egg and face the rest of the guests as he was killed. But just as Foolish was killed, Quackity came down one of his secret tunnels and entered the statue room. He sneakily dropped an axe to Puffy and attempted to convince Bad to let everyone go. Puffy went straight after Antfrost and killed him, just as Technoblade entered behind Quackity with his army of dogs and Purpled following just behind. Things were looking rough for the Eggpire as they realized they were heavily outnumbered now and couldn't do anything against them. So they all retreated, running through one of the tunnels and out towards the sea. Bad told them all to split up in case anyone was following them and got in a boat to flee to safety. And as they were fleeing, Purpled, Quackity and Technoblade led the guests to safety, mentioning how they were going to block off the egg and do experiments on it with the hopes of destroying it. And over the next months, nothing would really happen. The egg would end up staying in the statue room and gaining the power to harm people when they attempt to break it, causing no one to want to go near it. Eric also mentioned quite recently that the egg is dormant, probably because of the lack of people who have been down to see it and ultimately help it. And all of this together begs the question, what the hell is inside the egg? They threw this whole banquet with the main goal of hatching the egg, but nothing to really happen. They also mentioned they were going to try and destroy it via experiments, but we haven't seen anything happen with that either. And the main idea I have for all of this is that they will bring it back at a later date and most likely destroy it, which obviously is quite the boring outcome and not what we all want to hear. So what do I think is inside it? Well, from what we know, with it being able to talk to people and it using people's energy as a source of fuel and a way to heal itself, its ability to infect people and control people, it all adds up to some kind of monster, some mythical thing that would eventually destroy the SMP, a way of potentially ending the SMP and killing all the players. But one idea I really like is the thing inside the egg is actually a player, a new player that will eventually join the server and make their lore based around the egg. They will eventually join the server and hatch from the egg and become a sort of villain, having disciples by their side, similar to how Dream has people by his side and they do his bidding. Dream had Tommy on strings for ages, so this mythical character could do a similar thing and control people to do what they want. But I want to point out the massive thing being Tales from the SMP. We saw Carl go back in time and see the early days of the egg, which makes me think there is more stuff going on with Tales to do with the egg, especially when looking at the place called the Other Side and how this place is very nether themed and with that has similar looks to the egg, causing me to think that maybe one of the new demigods that we saw in the most recent Tales from the SMP episode has something to do with it and could potentially be what is in the egg. This demigod could have turned evil, attacking time travelers and even getting too powerful to the point that Dream XD just threw him into the world at maybe year 0. Stripped stripped him of the majority of their powers and is now inside the egg waiting to hatch. And maybe the way that the egg takes people's energy is also the way of this demigod getting their powers back. This would also explain how Sir Billiam came across the egg, as it has been on Earth or on the Dream SMP land since the beginning, year 0. And maybe we'll get more explanations for this with upcoming Tales episodes, because I definitely feel the egg storyline isn't fully over and I need some sort of ending to help clear it up and reveal the big questions like what is actually in it. And just so you know, as soon as we find out what is in it, I'll make a video about it. So make sure you do subscribe and check out Opera GX in the description, and I'll see you next time.